Liar. Everywhere. On netrootsradio.com. David Waldman. Kagro. In the morning. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? It is Tuesday, November 19th, 2024. Time for another show and time for things to start shifting around on the desk and making background noise. That's how you know it's a professional production. Okay, here we are, ready to roll, and, chaos reigns as usual. And although I do see today, I've been giving this some thought, but I won't be able to give this article very much thought because Molly Jong Fast writing at Vanity Fair, which is paywalled, just sort of saying that there really needs to be a different approach toward covering Trump this time around. I don't know whether these are rules that would necessarily apply to us, but just the idea that maybe the way to deal with them is not to go after every single outrage like it's a 5-alarm fire, which I don't think anybody has the energy to do. But it's a reminder, of course, of Steve Bannon's mantra about flooding the zone and what he's going to flood the zone with, and that it is designed essentially to make you chase your tail 24/7 and I guess clear the way for yet another outrage. Although, I'm not so certain that it is Trump's own plan, but it certainly seems to be Steve Bannon's plan. And as a matter of fact, let's see. Scott sent me something about on Bannon yesterday, although now I see he's noting that it's actually quite a long thing and it might be more of a Friday thing than anything else. But we'll have to see. And also I'll have to find my way around the paywall on it. But it's a article in, New York Magazine, Steve Bannon's second term. And we do well to remember that he's still out there. And, there's a lot to cover today. And, as usual, not enough time to do it. I guess one of the things I wanted to do is to go back to some stories that I wanted to cram in yesterday and just didn't find the time for. Maybe we can just hit the headlines first, just to sort of remind you that these things are happening. I was reminded of the fact that we didn't talk about them when I saw over at the Daily Kos one of the recap that's up on the front page that mentioned two of the stories. One of the stories we did get to, the headline for the recap: Trump threatens pollster, tests Senate loyalty, and is getting sick of Elon. And so what's this about? Well, I'll tell you. And that is, we already got to the part about testing Senate loyalty. That was what we talked about yesterday with Greg in terms of going around the Senate's advice and consent role and making appointments directly or without the Senate's consent, or forcing the Senate into recess so that there's a recess appointment, or many of the variations on that. And by the way, Greg Sargent sat down with Sarah Binder the other day, and I should listen to the podcast just to make sure that we have the correct pronunciation of her name. But they went through the mechanics of things, and basically it's a good interview. And if you feel like listening to another podcast, even after this podcast, and Justice Putnam's West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and you still have time, and you want to listen to some more, I can never recommend against Greg Sargent. But the upshot of that is we got it right, and our description of how things might work for Trump's workarounds is comports with what she had to say about it, and she's an actual expert, so we'll take that as a confirmation of priors here. But the other things that we didn't cover: Trump threatens pollster. Okay, what's that about? Well, this was something of an outrage on Sunday night, but, it didn't make it through. There was no room in the fire hose for this particular outrage. You will recall just before the election, we all engaged in some guarded optimism when we heard about Ann Selzer's poll of Iowa. And that was all very exciting, but we had the appropriate grain of salt with it. She's a very accurate, or has been a very accurate pollster, and has gotten very close to the mark usually. She's an Iowa specialist. And anyway, she had produced results that seemed to indicate that there was a chance that Harris could win Iowa. And that was surprising for most people. Although then we thought about it and said, on the one hand, there's every reason to believe that you could be shocked and surprised by a result that's driven by interest in reproductive rights and an outrage over the Dobbs case, as had been the case in several red states prior, right? So if people were really voting based on abortion, that might end up surprising us and confirming Ann Selzer's findings here. But at any rate, it didn't work out. And there was also some concern, when she was describing that, sure, sometimes she makes predictions that are outliers vis-a-vis the other pollsters and what they're saying about what they think is going to happen in Iowa or in other states or nationally. But that she had a different methodology, although I was a little bit concerned as I was reading, about her methodology. Her methodology seemed to be, I sort of abandoned the methodology idea. Not really. She's got a solid enough methodology, but it sounded like she was shying away from the special sauce, as Armando puts it, and that she doesn't like to do too much in the way of weighting her samples or guessing about the composition of the electorate. She just simply straight up asks the question, how are you voting? And I guess produces results that are supposed to be closest to that without manipulation. Not all my pocket stories are loading here, so we got, one issue is I had put aside the stories from the other day that describe all of what he was doing. But it comes down to this, that, and maybe it's some of these blue sky posts that I have to click all the way through in order to find the thing. Now, this isn't it either, and I think it's from before that. All right, my recollection of the story is basically this, that people had come back to Blue Sky with screen grabs from his Truth Social posting, in which Trump basically now threatens Ann Selzer and alleges that Ann Selzer ought to be investigated, and who knows, maybe arrested too. Why? Because, at bottom, because she published a poll that made him look like there was a possibility that he might lose a state. Now, he didn't lose that state, and the issue with his being so angry about it is really when are you going to be an adult and realize that you're the president of the United States and a grown-up figure, and you can't just rant and rave like a toddler at everything? Like, she said that she thought you might lose that state. So what? You didn't. Why isn't that the last laugh for you? And it's really indicative of some, psychopathy that he would be so upset about somebody who said he was going to lose, proving them wrong, and that's not enough for him. Here's the Truth Social post. A totally fake poll that caused great distrust and uncertainty at a very critical time. She knew exactly what she was doing. You see what he thinks that she faked this poll, and that she did it in order to undermine, this is something, undermine confidence, Americans' confidence in elections and the election outcomes, which is, of course, again, every Republican accusation being a confession. This is what he's been doing the whole time. His whole campaign was undermining Americans' confidence in the electoral system, in the media, in everything, that any medium that might carry the message that he had actually been rejected at the polls, if that were the case, needed to be undermined. The media is lying about the actual numbers of votes that were cast. The election system is lying about the number of votes cast and who they were cast for. That was his plan. And so it, I guess, becomes easy for him to imagine that must be what pollsters who think I'm not going to win everybody's vote and win every single state, they must be engaging in systematic undermining of American confidence in the electoral system, which will obviously vote unanimously for me. So here's how he puts it. A totally fake poll that caused great distrust and uncertainty at a very critical time. She knew exactly what she was doing. She knew exactly what she was doing. I have to repeat that for him, but thank you to the great people of Iowa for giving me such a record-breaking vote. Despite possible election fraud, that's in capitals, election fraud by Ann Selzer and the now discredited, quote, newspaper for which she works. An investigation is fully called for, whatever that actually means. And then a link to the Des Moines Register's story in which it is said pollster Ann Selzer's ending election polling and moving on to other ventures and opportunities, which is a story all by itself that we haven't gotten to. But a most interesting moment for the president-elect to now threaten investigations of pollsters who said he might not win, even though he did win. Now, I don't know how he would feel about investigating her or under what authority he would, but it wouldn't matter. He'd still call for an investigation had he, in fact, lost Iowa. That would have sent him over the edge. But at least we'd understand why the toddler was enraged. But in this case, we don't. He's just simply a psychopath, and everybody who says anything negative about him that reaches his ears has got to be destroyed. I don't think it's going anywhere. I think it's something he'll forget about along the way, as he does with many things, but you don't want to have to count on that. But I thought that was kind of an interesting point that we probably should have noted yesterday. The other that we didn't get to yesterday is also fun and interesting. More fun and interesting. That's actually scary, the Ann Selzer one. But is Trump getting sick of Elon? We've noted how Elon has spent the day since the election butting in on everything that ordinarily a president-elect might busy themselves with, whether that's getting security briefings. Now, of course, beginning to engage in diplomacy on his behalf, like meeting with the UN representative from Iran at some point and having unilateral talks with him. He didn't, go with the president's team. It was just Elon Musk going on behalf of the Trump administration. But he seems to be throwing his weight around all over the place and acting as though he considers himself to be co-president. And as you might imagine, that rankles inside Trump circles where people have been, eating crap for this guy and licking his boots for, 10 years to get to the position of power that they're in now. And Elon Musk just strolls in and takes over, and that's beginning to bother them. So that's kind of an interesting story to watch as well. I put a couple of those aside as well, but gosh, everything is so buried in other crazy stories, and I guess that's why I started off with the idea in mind that maybe chasing every single outrage is just not something we can actually do. But I had put aside for myself where I'll hit these things for the sake of being able to clear out pocket and try and make better sense of what I have in store for you. This was a blue sky skeet way back on November 13th from Jay Willis. Who's Jay Willis? Jay Willis is Blue Sky's only fantasy football guru. How do you like that? But normally says he writes about courts, media, democracy, and the 3 raccoons who live in a tree behind my house. Okay, sure. But at any rate, he had grabbed this from NBC News' report here. What's the, just trying to find the title of the story he's borrowing from. Elon Musk may already be overstaying his welcome in Trump's orbit. wrote NBC back on the 13th, and it's coming on, it's 6 days, but coming up on a week since this was written, so things are pretty fast moving. Musk has been a near constant presence at Mar-a-Lago, where he has sat in on important meetings and calls. We know he was on the Zelensky call. We know he was on several other calls. We know that he made calls of his own. So Jay Willis says, if we are already getting anonymous, holy crap, this guy is annoying stories, I'm not sure Elon Musk makes it to Inauguration Day in Trump's inner circle. He might be on a 2016 transition chair Chris Christie arc. Certainly something to think about, but he does bring an awful lot of money to the table. The screen grab from the NBC article that Jay focuses on reads, Musk has been so aggressive in pushing his views about Trump's second term that he's stepping on the toes of Trump's transition team and maybe overstaying his welcome at Mar-a-Lago, according to two people familiar with the transition who have spent time at the Palm Beach, Florida resort over the past week. The sources say that Musk's near constant presence at Mar-a-Lago in the week since Election Day has begun to wear on people who've been in Trump's inner circle longer than the tech billionaire and who see him as overstepping his role in the transition. The sources spoke on condition of anonymity because they're not authorized to speak publicly and they're afraid they'll fall out a window. He's behaving as if he's a co-president and making sure everyone knows it, one of the people said of Musk, and he's sure taking a lot of credit for the president's victory, bragging about America PAC and X to anyone who will listen. He's trying to make President Trump feel indebted to him. That's the reason we outlaw bribery, by the way. And the president is indebted to no one, this person added, except for the guy who spent $120 million rather, to elect him and who gave over the biggest social media platform at the time in the country and probably the world to dedicate it to his election effort. So, all right. Well, that seems interesting and, if not surprising, worth noting. Let me go back to Pocket and see what was like literally next to it in Pocket because they may be related. Although, okay. It won't actually do that. It's going to jump me back to God knows where. Okay. Well, anyway, I wanted to get that on the record and make sure that you had heard about it, and now you have. So, I don't know. That, I thought, made for interesting background. A couple of other things that I might be able to share with you, some of which are longer reads, and others which harken back to what we were talking about yesterday. Yesterday, we spent most of the day, I think, on Pete Hegseth. And just to round that out, maybe before we get around to any Matt Gaetz stories, I wanted to comb over this piece from Judd Legum, Rebecca Crosby, and Noel Sims over at Popular Information, Judd Legum's operation. 13 things everyone should know about Pete Hegseth. And that seems like too many things to know about Pete Hegseth. Some of them we already know, so I suppose we could skim over that. But let's see, because I know there were at least a couple things that seemed to make additional points that we could add to our dossier, I guess, on Pete Hegseth. If it, he may not last long enough to be worth having a dossier on, but what the hell. Secretary of Defense, it begins, is one of the most complex and consequential positions on earth. The person in that position is responsible for overseeing the world's largest bureaucracy, the Department of Defense, with over 2.6 million employees and a budget of over $840 billion. The Secretary of Defense is tasked with managing this massive institution to ensure the short-term and long-term security of the United States. On Wednesday, President-elect Donald Trump nominated Pete Hegseth, the weekend co-host of Fox and Friends, to be the next Secretary of Defense. Seems like a good match, right? Hegseth is a military veteran, sort of, who served in Iraq and Afghanistan and received a Bronze Star and other commendations. That's good. He also served in the National Guard, and that's nice too. But the largest organization that Hegseth has previously run, is Concerned Veterans for America, a Koch-funded right-wing advocacy organization where he served as executive director from 2012 to 2016. Concerned Veterans for America had a few dozen employees and a budget of around $15 million during his tenure, and in that role, Hegseth hired his younger brother, who had just graduated college, to a well-compensated media relations position at the CVA. Hegseth founded a small PAC in his native Minnesota to support conservative candidates. It managed to raise about $15,000 over several years. 1/3 of the funds raised were, quote, spent on 2 Christmas parties and reimbursements to Hegseth. So, nothing doing there. Even Trump's most loyal supporters acknowledge Hegseth's lack of relevant experience. Steve Bannon, Trump's chief strategist during the first term, said that Hegseth has, quote, never run a big organization, unquote, and is, quote, kind of a madman, unquote. Neither of which stops Bannon from supporting the whole thing, probably. But while Hegseth has limited management experience, he has spent many years in the public eye and has a long record of punditry. Here are 13 things everyone should know about the man Trump wants to put in charge of the nation's military. First, we've heard this one. Hegseth says women should not be in combat roles. And they're not that long. We can read through them, but let's see. That one's not a surprise. The next one was Hegseth paid a woman who accused him of rape to sign an NDA, and that one we spent all day on yesterday. Was there anything new in this one? No, I don't think so. Hegseth published a column in college. Oh, yes, this was of interest. While he was in college, he wrote for the college paper, I guess. That was back in Princeton, because they hate the Ivy League. Hegseth published a column in college that claimed having sex with an unconscious woman is not rape. Well, that explains his version of the story of the rape allegation from 2017, right? No, it was consensual. Okay, but your definition of consensual is if you knock her out with drugs and then have sex with her, that's not rape. So you say, I didn't rape her. She says, well, now, hold on a second. That actually is rape, and you did rape me. Well, it's a he said, she said. Well, no, it really isn't. So that makes a difference, I think, to find that. It's not just necessarily just youthful idiocy, and it may be a description of his M.O. That's kind of weird. I don't know. Ordinarily, it probably wouldn't bear on much. He's a conservative idiot. But now he's nominated for a Senate confirmable position. Will they have to go around the Senate in order to avoid having a Democratic senator ask questions about this column? Let's give the details on that one. While he was a student at Princeton in 2002, ancient times, Hegseth was the publisher of the Princeton Tory, not the good paper. This was a right-wing student newspaper. The regular paper, I guess, didn't want anything to do with him. In the September 2002 edition of the publication, flagged for popular information by Will Davis of ARC Initiatives, Hegseth published a column that claimed having intercourse with an unconscious woman was not rape. The columnist claimed that rape required both the failure to consent and, quote, duress, and that women who are passed out cannot experience duress. That was the logic of it. He does give a full lot. I mean, it's crazy, but he doesn't just say, well, God says that, and so therefore it's okay. He gives a logic. It's a bad logic, and 100% sure that if someone knocked him out with roofies and raped him, he would absolutely be outraged that he was raped. And of course, it would make him mad because it is not heterosexual activity, you see. And, if that were the case. And of course, if he was knocked out by a woman who somehow took sexual advantage of him, that would just be awesome for him because he's like, cool, I got laid. And, it's only, oh, now you make me uncomfortable because it wasn't heterosexual. And so therefore it's rape. I have no doubt that he would come to that conclusion, but he doesn't discuss it. Here's a quote from the article itself, I guess. A bemusing yet mandatory orientation program revolved entirely around whether an instance of sexual intercourse constituted rape. He's complaining as a student about the rape awareness program that he had to attend as a student, which, of course, he had to attend because he has a wrong-headed definition of rape that lets him off the hook for his favorite MO of giving people roofies, and they were trying to get through to him before he committed any rapes at Princeton to let him know, no, actually, Princeton will consider that a rape, but he was actually quite annoyed by that, and I guess wrote a column about it. A bemusing yet mandatory orientation program, apparently, revolved around this. The actual instance portrayed in the skit was, in fact, he says, not a clear case of rape, at least not in my home state. Is that right? In short, though intercourse was not consented to, there was no duress because the girl drank herself into unconsciousness, even though I put the unconscious pill in her drink or whatever. Both criteria must be satisfied for rape. Unfortunately, the panelists never cited any legal definition of rape, yet the panel, all females in the session I attended, now we get to the bottom of it. They just want everything to be rape. All females in the session I attended claimed that rape it was. Now, I don't know whether in 2002 he has a correct notion about the legal definition of rape in Minnesota. And furthermore, I guess I would say I'm also not sure that he has the correct definition of rape in New Jersey, which is where he actually is. And that, maybe if he's going to be running his mouth off about that and then possibly stalking the campus and raping unconscious women, he probably should have checked out what's the law here in New Jersey. Like, that's very interesting, sir. You told me what the law is in Minnesota. Maybe you should be at the University of Minnesota if this is the way you want to work. I hope not, because I'm pretty sure even by 2002, Minnesota had it straight. But that's the guy who'll be in charge of straightening out things like, rape in the military context.
Hi, everybody. It's me, David Waldman. Yes, the same guy who interrupts you all the time. Interrupting you one more time just to tell you again, another reminder that your contributions are what keep this show on the air, and Patreon.com, Patreon.com, is still among the easiest ways to make the sustaining subscription donations that keep us afloat. Are you ready for the pep talk about how our Patreon campaign is still going strong and growing? Well, too bad. Yeah, the plain fact is we actually are headed in the wrong direction, and whereas we once had about 175 monthly patrons, we're now actually down below 150. Time to recruit some more. Not exactly the kind of news I wanted to share, but there it is. For those of you in a position to support the show, Patreon.com does make it easy to make those secure, recurring monthly contributions to do so. Patreon.com/KagroX gets you straight to our donation page. We've been through a lot together. The worst of the pandemic, we hope. The worst of the insurrection, we hope. So go ahead and treat yourself. You don't need an excuse. Give yourself the gift of a little something you enjoy in life. Support the show. And of course, if you happen to prefer using PayPal or even the Square Cash app, we're up and running on those options too. So thanks again, everyone, for all your support. We couldn't, or at least shouldn't, do it without you. Hope you'll be on board soon too. Thanks for all your support.
All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. I guess there's 13 things that we're supposed to know, so there's more, but that just about winds it up for the Princeton newspaper thing. There's one more line here that says, in an introductory note to students in the September edition of this paper, Hegseth wrote that he hoped that the Princeton Tory would, quote, help shape the way you view the world. And I hope that the law in New Jersey might maybe enter into that as well. But definitely not a shocker at all for this guy. But 2002 was a little late for this nonsense. But there you have it. Hegseth, the next one up is Hegseth is a serial philanderer, making him a target for blackmail. I guess in Trump world, who knows whether or not that makes any difference and whether they feel any shame. But this is the truth. Hegseth has been married 3 times. That does happen. He divorced his first wife in 2009, and according to court records, the marriage dissolved because of Hegseth's infidelity. Okay, problematic. In August of 2017, while married to his second wife, Hegseth had a daughter with a Fox News producer. Holy moly. Okay, that's a little different. A woman with whom he had been having an affair. Hegseth's second wife filed for divorce in September, a month after the child was born. While many people get married and divorced multiple times, that's true. The nature of Hegseth's conduct may make him a target for blackmail and espionage. And that's actually the end of this point, although it really relates back to the point of the sexual assault. Because again, the chronology is he gets married in 2000. I don't know when he gets married, but he divorces in 2009 due to infidelity. Okay, again, that happens. In 2017, he again gets divorced over infidelity, but not just infidelity. He has a child out of wedlock with somebody who's working at Fox News. An office affair, and it results in a child, and second wife divorces him. But again, the timeline, September 2017, such that in October 2017, he is now drunkenly attending the California Republican Women's Convention as divorced guy. And it makes that much more sense that there is somebody, and even though the articles we read yesterday don't explicitly say it, it was strongly hinted elsewhere, but I just don't have that in print as backup, but it was strongly hinted elsewhere that the woman that he rapes allegedly in this 2017 incident is assigned to make sure that this guy doesn't get himself into trouble. Why do they think he would get himself into trouble? Well, his reputation precedes him. He is there to speak to the California Republican women, which is a bad idea in the first place, knowing that, A, he's in a bad place and just recently divorced. But he's just recently divorced because we've invited him because he's on Fox News all the time. He's a Fox News personality. That's why he's invited. He's coming here straight off getting divorced for having an affair with a woman at Fox News and impregnating her and having a child out of wedlock. He's a little bit of a wild man. We need somebody watching this guy. And even if that's not the assignment, it's an assignment that this woman takes on when she gets the text that says he's making trouble already and hitting on these two women at the bar and making them super uncomfortable. He's in super divorced mode and he's going to town. We got to get him out of here. And then, so he drags his minder back to the room, maybe roofies her. Next day, she's wandering the hotel, lost with no memory of what happened yesterday, but heads over to the hospital just in case. And lo and behold, guess what they find? Evidence of intercourse with Pete Hegseth. But hey, who knows? She didn't experience duress. And as wrong as that is, and I imagine the law is a little tighter in California in 2017 than he thought it was in Minnesota in 2002. And yet, again, Republicans in Trump world walk free and say, that is what the law is. I don't care what you all say. I'm not in jail. That must be right. Put him in charge. All right. Just wanted to put that out there. The next one up here, I don't know. They're not numbered, so I don't know where I am in all this. Hegseth criticized injured veterans who receive government assistance. In case you were wondering what kind of, empathy he would have for the troops, having himself served. Now, remember also that he was considered for and later rejected by the first Trump administration for heading up the VA. Maybe it had something to do with this. You don't want the guy who would criticize injured veterans who receive government assistance to be heading up the system whereby injured veterans receive government assistance. I mean, you and I don't. Trump does. Because, one, he thinks all veterans are losers and suckers, and especially the injured ones. Don't get injured. I like soldiers who aren't injured, okay? And then, of course, they want to slash money out of the budget. And they have their sights set on an amount of money that Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy are saying they're going to cut out of the budget that can't be done if you leave the Department of Defense and the Department of Veteran Affairs alone. But they always keep swearing that that's what they're going to do because it plays with the bikers, I guess. Anyway, what did he do? In April 5th, 2019 appearance, this would have been well after he had been considered and chucked overboard as a VA nominee. April 5th, 2019 appearance on Fox News. Hegseth criticized veterans who received government assistance for injuries sustained during their service. Sure, let's all do that. Hegseth bemoaned that, quote, vets groups encourage vets to apply for every government benefit they can get after they leave the service. That's the intention. But anyway, he argued that absent a chronic condition, accepting benefits violates the ethos of service because it makes veterans dependent on the government. Well, I mean, that's conservative philosophy. They do tend to suspend that philosophy when it comes to veterans and active duty military for political reasons. So, I don't know. I mean, I think that's a bad human position to take, but I guess it's a consistent conservative position to take. We'll see whether any of the conservatives who are in charge of things, including his appointment, agree. Next thing up that they want you to know, Hegseth praised waterboarding and blasted the Geneva Conventions. I think that probably speaks for itself, but it's a short blurb. April 2016, speech to the Conservative Forum. Hegseth said that waterboarding, which is a form of torture, as you know, was an effective interrogation technique, and that military leaders taking waterboarding off the table was absolutely a mistake. He mocked leaders who claimed that it was inhumane. You should try it on him. In addition to being illegal, waterboarding and other forms of torture have been shown to elicit unreliable information from detainees. Not that they care about that. Further, Hegseth has been critical of the Geneva Conventions, which provide for the humane treatment of prisoners of war. Next up, Hegseth discussed moral concerns about the use of nuclear weapons. They won. Who cares? Hegseth wrote in the War on Warriors about the Americans who dropped nuclear bombs on Japan in World War II. I see. Okay. Did I say expressed moral concerns? Because I was like, that's surprising. No, dismissed moral concerns about the use of nuclear weapons. I don't know whether that's totally different from where most defense secretaries have been. But it's troublesome on a human level, certainly. I was going to say about the dismissal of the Geneva Conventions, that jives, of course, with his advocacy for the pardoning of convicted war criminals for, extra legal murders in Iraq. So I guess that shouldn't be surprising either. Hegseth pushed Trump, there it is, to pardon service members convicted of war crimes. So that probably should have followed up the Geneva Conventions one directly. I think we've discussed who they were and how he advocated for their pardon and that he was successful. So we'll skip to Hegseth said the United Nations should be shut down. That's a favorite among conservatives, but he has said it as well, this time on May 28th, 2020, when he should have been locked down and not talking to anybody. Hegseth said the United Nations should be eliminated. Stop debating about, do we do a little bit less at the UN? No, just get rid of the UN. Just get rid of it. It's a poisoned body, and it's anti-American, anti-Israel, anti-Semitic institution that now bonds together to gang up on us, to gang up on the West, and what use does it have? All right, then, of course, the Hegseth tattoos are next discussed, and that's gotten enough time as it is. There's a picture, though, of the one that everybody is concerned about, Deus Vult. Hegseth is a member of a Christian supremacist church. Hegseth is a member of the Communion of Reformed Evangelical Churches. Apparently they've got an acronym, CREC. Doug Wilson, CREC's founder, openly ascribes to Christian nationalism, wrote a book praising the antebellum South as an idyllic multiracial Christian society, oh boy, and said that women should not have the right to vote. Wilson and his wife have written books. She didn't have the right to do that. That's crazy. Implying that rape within marriage is impossible. Another free rape ticket for Hegseth. That's good news. No wonder he's married so many times. And several women in Wilson's Moscow, Idaho church. Oh, and do they pronounce it funny, don't they? I think Joan told me about that once, and I've already forgotten how they pronounce it. Moscow. I don't know what they say. How can they disguise it? Because in either pronunciation that I know of the city name, Still implies Russia, but it was something. All right. Well, at any rate, that's where his church is based, and the community there. Let's see. Several women in the church have accused him, Wilson, of protecting their abusers. Seems to be church ideology. Hegseth has been reported to be in good standing with the church. He's also involved with an association of classical Christian schools, a Christian private school network co-funded by Wilson. His children attended a school in the network, and he co-authored a book in 2022 with the network's president, David Goodwin, about how such schools can save kids from leftist indoctrination in government schools and elite universities like Princeton. Hegseth has degrees, of course, from Princeton and one from Harvard as well. I really don't know when these schools are finding the time to admit these dolts and give them credentials, but they should be looking more closely at this. Also, I'm sort of interested in how he's from Minnesota and then moves to New York and tries to join the New York National Guard, and they won't have him, but he somehow finds his way into the D.C. National Guard, though he doesn't live in or work in D.C., and he's a member of a church in Idaho. So I don't know what's going on with this guy. He's all over the map. Hegseth said rising Muslim birth rates were causing, quote, a slow motion 9/11. 9/11, of course, most famous for unfolding in slow motion. I mean, it's actually quite the opposite, but whatever. This time a slow motion one is happening. How so? Hegseth is a frequent promoter of Islamophobic rhetoric and has repeatedly warned about Muslim, quote, birth rates on Fox and Friends Sunday. In 2018, Hegseth said that France was experiencing a slow-motion 9/11 because Muslims are having 2.6 kids, and it's the 0.6 that's the real trick, whereas French-born folks are having 1.6 kids. Oh, 0.6 kids, I guess. In his book, American Crusade, Hegseth makes similar claims, writing that Europe is being, quote, invaded both, quote, culturally and demographically, unquote, by Muslims, lamenting that, quote, in 2019, the most popular name in England for newborn boys was Muhammad. Hegseth claims that this is also happening in America, but that we are behind the trends of Europe due to our traditional Christian fabric. Hegseth also promoted an editorial comparing same-sex marriage to bestiality. That sounds like a fun one. And I guess it's the 13th and last. So, I don't know. How specifically do we want to be outraged? Okay. In September 2002, during Hegseth's tenure as a publisher of the Princeton Tory, they published an unsigned opinion that compared same-sex marriage to incest and bestiality. The piece denounced the New York Times' decision to publish same-sex marriage announcements, arguing, at what point does the paper deem a relationship unfit for publication? What if we loved our sister and wanted to marry her? Or maybe two women at the same time? You would like to see that in the paper, probably. A 13-year-old. You might be okay with that, too. The Family Dog. In October 2002, a piece in the Princeton Tory stated that, quote, boys can wear bras and girls can wear ties until we're blue in the face, and I wish you were, but it won't change the reality that the homosexual lifestyle is abnormal and immoral. I would not be opposed to seeing him blue in the face, by the way. In the War on Warriors, Hegseth continued to push anti-LGBTQ beliefs, complaining about, quote, ads promoting diversity in the military to, oh boy, quote, trannies and lesbians, arguing that they were dissuading the young patriotic Christian men who have traditionally filled our ranks, unquote. Oh my God, I mean Judeo-Christian. Okay, no, he didn't say Judeo-Christian. He left the Judeos out on this one. And, all right, so he's every bit the bastard you thought he was, and now you know the specifics of exactly how and why. And we can, if we wish, move on to Matt Gaetz. I'll just give you this update from the Washington Post, just so we're up to speed on who's testifying as to what. 2 women have testified that Matt Gaetz paid them for sex, the lawyer says. An attorney representing 2 witnesses in the House Ethics Committee investigation goes public. Yesterday's publication over at the Washington Post. Jacqueline Alemany, Liz Goodwin, and Perry Stein on the byline. A woman testified to the House Ethics Committee that former Congressman Matt Gaetz paid her for sex and that she witnessed President-elect Donald Trump's pick for Attorney General having sex with a 17-year-old at the party, her lawyer said over the weekend. So he paid me, and I saw him do this also with another woman who was underage. Florida attorney Joel Leopard, remember him, Def Leppard, said in an interview with the Washington Post that one of his clients witnessed Gaetz having sex with the minor at a drug-fueled party in July of 2017. Again, ancient times. This is 6 months into the Trump administration. The first time around, we were all around for that one. And by the way, really, I don't care who the person is, if it's his wife, whatever. Like, the idea of like, well, I witnessed him having sex with her. We should not be witnessing anybody else having sex with anybody else in this context, as far as I can tell you. I mean, you can go to a show and witness it. You can rent the movie and witness it. You can go online and watch a film there, I guess. A film. A cinematic masterpiece there. But the idea, was he in Congress at the time? He might not have come in right away in the first term. I'm not sure if I remember exactly when he started, but it's just sort of like at a party. And like, oh, yes, remember I was saying yesterday, who is it that we were talking about having sex parties all the time? I found that reference. I'll give that to you in a moment. For now, I'll stay focused here, and we'll continue on. So this woman says that she witnessed Gaetz having sex with the minor at a drug-fueled party July 2017, and that Gaetz was unaware of her age at the time, but subsequently was told she was underage. ABC News first reported the news, and that's of some interest, I guess. And I don't know, the mechanics of it are kind of interesting. He became aware afterwards. So, okay. I mean, they were all there. I mean, I don't know. Maybe they became aware afterwards and then passed it on afterwards. But if they're aware at the time, he is right there. They could just say, Matt, hate to interrupt, but chatting from across the room here, she's underage. You might want to terminate this like now. No, don't stop me now. I'm on a roll. Well, this woman and a second woman, also represented by Leopard, testified that they were paid by Gaetz to have sex with him and other individuals who attended these sex parties. I just don't know. Sex parties. Never been to one of those. They were paid through Venmo or other conduits, including the PayPal of, ready for this one? Remember this guy? Nestor Galban. Remember? No? That's Nestor Galban, whom Gaetz has referred to as his adopted son. So it's not enough that witnesses are watching him have sex with the 17-year-old, and that he's paying the 17-year-old, and that he's paying the 17-year-old using Venmo and PayPal, but he's paying the 17-year-old with whom he's having sex in the middle of a party with his adopted son's account. Why? What even is the excuse for that? I do not know. I mean, I guess I could imagine. I picked up a phone and I forgot that I was so drunk and so high when I was having sex with the 17-year-old. I didn't know that it was Nestor's phone, but I have the unlock code to that because he's my son, you see. And everybody remembers the background of Nestor, right? Nestor is originally the 12-year-old brother of a unknown aged woman that he is dating and who moves in with him and comes with the 12-year-old brother because of all the parental supervision that's going on in that house, I guess. And he ends up adopting him. She leaves. They eventually break up. She moves out. The 12-year-old stays. I don't know how old he is at that point. And Gaetz says he, quote-unquote, adopts him. And then, having adopted him, uses his phone to pay underage prostitutes. Whatever. Things happen. What can I tell you? Gaetz never pressured Leopard's clients to do drugs at these parties. No. He's not a pusher, you see. One of his clients testified. But she said that the use of drugs such as ecstasy was widespread and expected. When they were asked by House investigators if Gaetz showed signs of being on drugs, the women answered affirmatively, according to the lawyer's account. that could have been like, yeah, I guess so. Or it could have been like, F yeah, he was snorting everything in sight. Gaetz' nomination has been met with shock and pushback among a faction of Senate Republicans. Several have raised doubts that he would have the 50 votes needed to be confirmed after what would doubtless be a damaging and scandalous confirmation hearing. Gaetz did not respond to a request for comment, but has previously denied the allegations. Alex Pfeiffer, a spokesman for the Trump transition, I don't think we know this guy, indicated that in a statement that Trump still stood behind his pick. Matt Gaetz will be the next attorney general, he said, noting that the President Biden's Justice Department ended the investigation into Gaetz without charges. There is that. He's the right man for the job. Well, that ain't true. You can still push for him, but he's not the right man for the job. And will end the weaponization of our justice system. He won't. He will hyper weaponize it on behalf of Trump. They consider that to be just as Pete Hegseth says, if you're unconscious, that's not rape. If you're doing it on our behalf, that's not weaponization. These are baseless allegations, and we can skip the rest of that. Leopard called on the Ethics Committee to publicly release its findings, explaining that his clients expressed concern about testifying in front of the Senate in what is expected to be a bitter confirmation battle. So, yes, we didn't get to that yesterday, but we did mention that they could bring these witnesses to the confirmation hearing. And I groaned a little bit because I will say, while that would be, I think, helpful in terms of driving home the case against Gaetz, the record of it working out well for the women who come forward and tell the truth about the men who have been nominated is not good. They usually find themselves having to go into hiding and finding their lives more or less derailed, if not destroyed. And I don't like those odds. But I do wish that it could be done without hurting them. And but here, this is why the lawyer is saying, well, look, don't make them do this. Just take the report. They came forward once in a controlled setting. They gave sworn statements. Read the sworn statements. You can do that. They've already been through so much, he goes on to say, and each time it happens, it kind of rips apart an old wound, said Leopard. They really don't want to be called to testify. There's a lot of facts out there. They've given a lot of testimony, provided countless hours and documents to the House, and they don't want to see it go to waste. The GOP will have a 53-seat majority next year and could not lose 4 or more votes on his nomination, given that it's unlikely any Democrat would vote for him. More than 4 Republican senators have already raised questions about his path forward, not that they can't flip-flop. Gaetz spent the weekend phoning multiple senators on the Judiciary Committee saying he felt he could defend himself in a hearing. Really. Trump and members of his team also made calls to gauge his support, according to 2 people familiar with the conversations. Senator John Neely Kennedy, they're now calling him that, I guess, rather than just Kennedy, Republican, of course, of Louisiana, said Gaetz called him and asked if he'd get a, quote, fair shake at his confirmation hearing. I said, absolutely, Kennedy told reporters. Just come on over to the Judiciary Committee, answer all the questions, and tell everybody what your plans are. Well, my plans are to crush Viagra, snort it, and chase it with a Red Bull, and go all night. That's not me saying that. That, by the way, that's the description that Mark Wayne Mullen gave of hearing Matt Gaetz' stories. I have the video on that if you need me to roll it. Senator Josh Hawley of Missouri said Gaetz called him over the weekend as well. He wants to have the chance to clear his name at a hearing, Hawley said, and I think that's a great idea. At least one Republican senator who was previously demanding access to the House Ethics Report on Gaetz said on Monday he believed his accusers could be called as witnesses at the hearing instead. That's, I guess, is that John Cornyn? Said he doesn't believe the ethics report release is critical for Gaetz' confirmation hearing because he believes the committee will call the witnesses to testify. So it's interesting. That's his excuse for not pressing on getting the report released and therefore burying whatever might be in there. And instead, we'll call them as witnesses and then harass them and destroy their lives and hope that they run away before they tell the really damaging stuff that is already in the report. It's an interesting trick. The truth is the information is going to come out one way or the other. So I guess the more I thought about it, it's not critical that they release the report because we know roughly who the witnesses are and we'll call them in front of the Judiciary Committee, he said, knowing that it would be torture and that they'll get death threats for going, which will make them decide not to go, which will make them, Cornyn, then say, well, we asked them what happened and they wouldn't say. So what can I tell you? I guess we'll have to vote to confirm him. That's just whitewashing. Tom Tillis of North Carolina, another Judiciary Committee member who has been critical of Gaetz' chances, told reporters he would defer to Speaker Johnson's decision not to release the ethics report. Remember that's going on. Johnson says he's on board with quashing it. And you should be, reminded at this point, Johnson is the guy who says that he is morally bound to tell his teenage son and vice versa if he views any porn online. So he's going to be open about that with his teenage son, you see. I mean, the idea, of course, being that, no, of course I haven't seen any. So he'll never have to actually do anything. But this, we take this stuff very seriously, so seriously that we would embarrass ourselves in front of our family members by confessing to this if it was ever the case. But release the report? No. There, we're not going to have any of this uncomfortable stuff going on. So yes to telling your son about your online porn habits. No to releasing the official report of the House Ethics Committee with sworn statements and everything. Okay. Let's see. Tillis says there were other ways for the allegations to be included in the hearing without the report. You should take a look at the Kavanaugh hearing, referencing the Supreme Court confirmation hearings for Brett Kavanaugh, which included testimony from a woman who said he assaulted her while in high school. Kavanaugh denied the allegations. It might be worth mentioning at this point, and they beat the living crap out of her publicly and sent her running for cover, that's what I mean by take a look at the Kavanaugh thing. Don't release the report where the sworn statements, which were subject to cross-examination, were made a part of the official record. That would not give us a chance to destroy the lives of these women. We demand the chance to destroy the lives of these women, if you want to hear these allegations. Despite some of the blowback, transition officials on Monday worked to build out the teams that will be helping the nominees move through the confirmation process, according to people familiar with the matter. Leopard's clients also testified to the House that they submitted sworn statements to the FBI and Justice Department investigators and appeared before a grand jury as part of the federal investigation into Gaetz. So again, they've been on the record a number of times. Why do you need to do it again? Because this time we're going to make them pay for being witnesses. The Senate Judiciary Committee could try to obtain materials from the Justice Department's investigation into the sex trafficking allegations involving underage girls that resulted in no federal charges against Gaetz. But even when subpoenaed, the Justice Department rarely gives Congress sensitive law enforcement material or criminal investigatory files. So there is that. The norms are going to stand in the way again. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. Let's see, I don't think we got all the way through this here. There's more, but we're getting near the end. We're reading through the Washington Post's latest, as of yesterday, about the Matt Gaetz situation. That is an interesting tack they could take, right, if they don't get the House Ethics Report and either don't want to or can't call the witnesses who spoke to the House Ethics Committee in front of the Senate Judiciary Committee for what would be, I guess, their fourth sworn testimony on this subject. If they spoke to the House Ethics Committee, the FBI and the Justice Department, and the grand jury, though they may have spoken to the FBI and the Justice Department in the same sitting, possibly, since, of course, FBI is DOJ. But at any rate, where were we with this? Right. Oh, then they said, well, maybe we could get some of that information. We can get I don't know if we can get the grand jury information, but can we get the Justice Department files on this guy if the House Ethics Committee won't give us their files? They could, but usually the Department of Justice's position on this stuff is, no, we're not going to give you sensitive law enforcement material or criminal investigatory files, particularly in light of the fact that we decided not to charge him. The FBI typically conducts background checks ahead of a confirmation hearing for a nominee, and the federal investigation into Gaetz could be accounted for in that check, or they could just not do it. Or they could do it like they did for Kavanaugh, fake it, and just not do it in that sense. The House Ethics Committee has previously asked the Justice Department to provide certain information about the Gaetz investigation, and when the law enforcement officials refused, the committee subpoenaed the Justice Department for some materials. I don't know how that went, but usually, fizzles. However, under Rule 6E of the Federal Rules of Criminal Procedure, any grand jury materials must be kept secret and confidential and cannot be shared. There are some exceptions under the rule related to national security, which, this guy's going to be Attorney General. There's a national security element there. Or if the material is used in a judicial proceeding, which I guess it wasn't. Douglas Letter, former counsel for the House, sought to obtain special counsel Robert Mueller's grand jury material as part of the House Judiciary Committee's impeachment investigation of Trump, arguing that the framers discussed impeachment as a judicial proceeding. The effort was originally successful in the courts, but the issue became moot before the Supreme Court ruled. There's no impeachment going on here, said Letter. It's just the Senate doing its constitutionally provided job to advise and consent, which they may not get to do. There's nothing in there that would be covered as an exemption to Rule 6E. I wonder if we could get creative about it in some way. Well, you probably could, but not with a Republican Senate and or House. So it's probably not worth considering at this point. But were they democratically controlled? I guess you could ask the question at that point, can you impeach a nominee? Can you impeach a nominee? I mean, if you can control the legislature to the extent where you could do that, then you could just simply reject the nominee. So I guess it would be moot. But if you really, really wanted to get a hold of this grand jury material, and there was some really good reason to have to do it, that would probably be outside of the context of simply rejecting this person as a nominee. There'd have to be something more. So, yeah, it's very difficult to imagine the situation in which it would work. We can say that much. All right, let's see. When I was reading through, there were, again, 10 things that I thought, let's bring up this story or that story. But now those things have passed. Maybe visiting pocket will remind me of some of those things. So here's one of them, as a matter of fact. As we said yesterday, I kept saying to Greg, gosh, these ideas, we were listening to him tell us the story of Madison Cawthorn recounting how he had been shocked to learn that there were sex parties going on in Capitol Hill. Mostly he was shocked because these are old people, yuck, as opposed to, I'm such an innocent myself. Remember that his own tenure, brief though it was, in Congress was marked with discoveries of his own questionable behaviors, including, wasn't he like on a cruise somewhere and ended up having somebody taking him pictures of him in women's lingerie or something like that. But it was a totally heterosexual kind of way of doing it, you see. And sure, whatever, guy. Anyway, but he was he had his own problems, but he was concerned that the olds were engaged in drug-fueled sex parties. And then that made us say, didn't we just read about somebody having sex parties? And again, referring to them as things that you would be invited to, and just musing what does that invitation look like or sound like? Hey, want to come over to a sex party? Is there a terminology for it that the kids, or the olds for that matter, are using these days that avoids the stupid sounding idea of want to come to a sex party? Surely there's some cooler terminology than that. What was it that we were thinking of? And this was the answer. Back on, September 17th, I want to say, was my recollection of having refreshed my memory about it. We read the New York Times' story of the former New York City COVID czar who partied while preaching social distancing. Partied sounds cooler. But these were particular kinds of parties. In a hidden camera video posted by a conservative podcaster, Dr. J.K., that's J-A-Y, middle initial K, Varma, boasts about flouting the public health guidelines he insisted that others follow. Now, not conveyed in the headline or subheader is the extent to which Varma is advocating breaking the 6-foot distancing rule. I mean, It's not that he's getting people 5 feet together. It's that he's having sex parties. And they have to be a lot closer together than just that. This was Sarah Maslin-Neer's piece back on September 19th, so we almost certainly couldn't have talked about it on the 17th, but we're nearby. The official in charge of New York City's pandemic response participated in sex parties and attended a dance party, which is not necessarily a sex party, but also probably involves people being closer together, underneath a Wall Street bank during the height of the pandemic, even as he was instructing New Yorkers to stay home and stay away from others to stop the spread of COVID-19. He acknowledged his transgressions on Thursday after being caught on hidden camera boasting about his exploits, which that was what, sent us into a tizzy there. Like, what part of the world, where is this happening? I don't know. I just imagine missing out entirely on being invited to sex parties. I find the whole thing strange and difficult to understand, but that was the context. That's what I was thinking about the other day. So I don't need to remind you of that story. No one needs to be reminded of this story, but it's out there. We remembered correctly. Okay. Another thing to catch up on is the Alex Jones InfoWars fire sale. When we last left off, we had heard that InfoWars and all of its assets were being put up for auction to try to settle, in bankruptcy, to try to settle any part that they could of the debt that Alex Jones owes to the families from Sandy Hook, who he maligned for years on his program. And then they sued him, he lost, and he owes them $1 bazillion. So the last we had heard, the InfoWars assets were being put up for auction, and there was an auction, and that the ownership group of The Onion, who's, I can't remember the names of everybody. It's Ben, but Ben what? I don't remember. Doesn't matter. You know him. And anyway, they, just as it was funny for him to make a bid for the assets of The Onion and take over The Onion, somebody said, hey, the funniest thing would be for you to make a bid for the assets of InfoWars and take over that. And he did, and guess what? It worked. But then there was a problem. Did it work? And let's see. I mean, there's a couple of articles along the way from a couple of days ago where things got really crazy. And then some follow-ups and some analyses that suggest that it isn't quite as bad or as complicated as all that. But apparently, I guess this too, over the weekend, we heard that, well, just like with everything else, when conservatives lose in court or anywhere else, they demand a do-over and make sometimes outlandish claims based on, let's say, idiosyncratic interpretations of the written law and precedential law as well, to claim that something's wrong here and we get a big do-over and all this. So the bidding ends with the Onion ownership group winning the assets of InfoWars and having a great time on Friday telling everybody what they were thinking of doing about it, or the fact that they really had no idea what to do about it. They just did it because it was funny, and you should just enjoy that. By the time the weekend rolls around, Alex Jones, of course, furious and can't admit defeat, and apparently enlists somehow Elon Musk in all of this, and basically says, look, my theory is this. There was an auction in bankruptcy, and apparently there were two bidders, the Onion Group being one of them, the other being the group that I thought was going to win. Alex Jones went into this auction thinking, surely some conservative billionaire can come swooping in here, make a fantastic bid, buy the assets of InfoWars, use the cash to pay off the judgment against me, or at least partially pay off the judgment against me, but then, because he doesn't care about losing money because he's a billionaire, hand me back at least nominal control of InfoWars, the InfoWars infrastructure, and allow me to continue doing the show. That's what he had hoped would happen, which, of course, had you seen it happen, you would have said, well, this is garbage. This is rigged bidding, essentially. You can't do this. The assets have been ripped away from him. To have them simply returned to him, especially if there's only one or two bidders, and especially if it's two bidders and it's two different right-wing billionaires trying to do this, that would be, ordinarily you would think, rigged bidding and the sort of thing that the courts could invalidate. But here there were two bidders, and one of them was, in fact, a wealthy patron of sorts, and somehow that wealthy patron wasn't wealthy enough to outbid the Onion ownership group. But now you find Alex Jones saying, well, it doesn't, we were going to say that we were going to try to rig the bidding ourselves, but we got outrigged. But it was still yet something we could point to and say, see, that's rigged. There were only two bidders, and ordinarily courts reserve to themselves, the bankruptcy courts, the right to invalidate those things if they think they are rigged. And one of the indicators that there might have been rigging is an insufficient number of bidders. So, I mean, there's a mechanism whereby you can do this, but does it apply to a situation where, well, one bidder is at least coming from a very different perspective and has very different plans, including not turning the assets back over to Alex Jones? Would that be enough? Just the fact that there are two to reverse it just based on that? Alex Jones wanted to find out. Then it turns out, sort of inexplicably, Elon Musk and X intervene or attempt to intervene in some way in the case, as if to say, well, I would have bid if I had known, or I may yet want to bid, or I will at least pay for Alex Jones's appeal such that he can dispute the validity of the auction and of the sale. And so they were going to essentially take a mechanism that's supposed to be used to prevent rigged bidding to, in fact, demand a do-over with rigged bidding in place by pointing at the fact that somebody else won and saying, no, that was the rigging. Well, the presence of, and in fact, the winning the auction, but the presence of a hostile entity that has no plans whatsoever to give the assets back to Jones is actually what they need to establish that it wasn't rigged. But they're going to depend on the fact that there were only two parties, regardless of who the two parties are, that should be alone evidence of rigging, and it's really not. Well, anyway, as it turns out, there is there's a Mother Jones piece that says Alex Jones is trying to halt the sale of InfoWars. Elon Musk's ex just got involved in the case. And another piece from Law and Chaos Pod that says, no, Elon Musk isn't riding to Alex Jones's rescue. And that one I have seen Ben, whatever his name is, I can't remember offhand. I want to say Shapiro. No, that's the jerky guy. Domenech, that's the other jerky guy. Ben, right on the tip of my tongue. I think it also starts with S. Anyway, he has seen this Law and Chaos Pod piece and endorsed that as a better description of what's going on. So let's first ring the alarm bells and then unring them, I guess. If we can we see the original here? Anna Merlan wrote this up for Mother Jones. Alex Jones, not Mother Jones, but Alex Jones, who is not Mother Jones's son, is trying to halt the sale of InfoWars. No relation there. Elon Musk's ex just got involved in the case. At an emergency hearing, lawyers for the social media company appeared. And poof, they just appeared out of nowhere. They haven't explained why or how, but magicians never give away their tricks. So, on Thursday afternoon, a federal bankruptcy judge in Texas ordered an evidentiary hearing to review the auction process that resulted in InfoWars being sold to the satire site The Onion, saying he wanted to ensure, and he can still say, I investigated it, they asked the question, it's not a great question, but I gave it a thorough hearing, and no, just the fact that there are two parties only doesn't by itself mean anything. He can still reach that conclusion and probably will. But he wanted to try to be fair and look like he wasn't railroading them. So he said he wanted to be sure that the process and transparency of the sale were legit. InfoWars' founder, the conspiracy mega entrepreneur Alex Jones, has unsurprisingly declared that the auction process was, quote, rigged, and vowed that the review process will return the site to him. while the Onion CEO told Mother Jones and other news outlets that the sale is proceeding. For reasons that no one has yet explained, attorneys for X, formerly known as Twitter, the social media giant now owned by Elon Musk, entered an appearance during the hearing and asked to be included on any future communications about the case. No. I was told this is Alex Jones. I was told Elon was going to be very involved in this, Jones said during a live broadcast on X. After InfoWars was seized and the site shut down, Jones promptly began operating under the name and branding of the new venture, dubbed the Alex Jones Network, which streams on X, which I guess is why they thought they could intervene. Jones noted that lawyers for X were present at the hearing, adding, somewhat mysteriously, "The cavalry is here. Trump is pissed." He later elaborated that Trump knows I'm one of his biggest defenders. An attorney who entered an appearance for X didn't respond to a request for comment, nor did X's press office. Onion CEO Ben, drumroll, Collins, not starting with an S, but ending with an S, I guess. Unless... all right. Well, Ben Collins. Okay. See if I can remember that from here on in. Previously a journalist at NBC News covering disinformation, by the way, told Mother Jones on Friday morning, "We won the bid." The idea that he was just going to walk away from this gracefully without doing this sort of thing is funny in itself. In a statement reprinted by Variety and other outlets, Collins said that the sale is, quote, currently underway, pending standard processes. Collins has said previously that the plan was to relaunch InfoWars as a satirized version of itself in January. I'm available, Ben. I even do one or two wacky voices, including Alex Jones's. I don't know. I'd have to study his voice a little closer. I just know it's gruff and stupid sounding. As this odd situation played out, however, InfoWars' website came back online on Friday afternoon. Soon after, Jones and his staff had also returned to InfoWars' studios. Throughout Friday and Saturday morning, the site was full of stories preemptively declaring Jones' victory over the Onion. "I told you," Jones crowed during a Friday night broadcast, back behind his usual desk. "If you want to fight, you've got one." After the original publication of this article, Collins responded to the revival of InfoWars in a Twitter thread, reiterating that the Onion won the bidding and writing that his company, quote, left the hearing with clear next steps to complete the sale. InfoWars' current management asked to continue operating. Until then, we always knew the guys who currently run InfoWars were going to take this badly and use a loss to fundraise off of it. They did not disappoint. Jones also vowed that even if InfoWars is sold, he would sue anyone who, quote, impersonates him. Whoops. And as well as the big Democrat gun control group. I don't want to get sued. We'll do the, I guess we could just turn him into the other voice that we do for, David K. Johnston, right? Well, we could just do it as a falsetto. This will be Alex Jones from now on, because we don't make fun of David K. Johnston this way anymore anyway. All right, well, I think it's okay to just do, and it's not an impersonation, it's an impression, sir. Anyway, the New York Times, it says parenthetically here, has reported that Every Town for Gun Safety, which advocates for gun law reform, plans to advertise on the relaunched satire version of the site. Judge Christopher Lopez of Texas's Southern District. By the way, that just makes me an even better fit for this. Ben, I have a history of reporting on a particular angle of gun violence for many years. The Gun Fail series. Everybody loved hearing about that. I would be a great mesh and a great fit for your new sponsor. As long as I can do the show here in my house. I think that kind of rules me out of almost every serious job. But okay, back to the story. Judge Christopher Lopez of Texas's Southern District has been overseeing the years-long bankruptcy case for InfoWars. The company and Jones personally filed for bankruptcy protection amid civil lawsuits brought by the parents of children who died at Sandy Hook. You know the background here, so we'll try and breeze through it as, even though that's not something to be breezed through. Jones was found liable by default for defaming the Sandy Hook families by repeatedly claiming that the mass shooting was a hoax and suggesting that some of the parents were actors. In the Thursday hearing, Lopez said nobody should feel comfortable with the results of this auction until the evidentiary hearing was held. which might just be his way of saying after that, you can be as comfortable as you want. But okay. Christopher Murray, the court-appointed bankruptcy trustee who declared the Onion's parent company, Global Tetrahedron LLC, to be the auction's winner. And by the way, I respect the hell out of the skill of just being able to assemble the capital necessary to win bids on stuff like left and right. I don't know what Collins's background is, but how he I don't know how you engineer those deals except just talking people into it. This would be funny. Come on. I think I would be, that's a job I should be taking too, right? Convincing people with money to give money to the cause that would be funny. I feel like that was a job made for me, but I missed my calling here. Anyway, where were we? Global Tetrahedron, right, is the auction's winner. Considered the bids in private. That's what Chris Murray did, the court-appointed bankruptcy trustee. Okay. According to Bloomberg, Murray told Lopez that Global Tetrahedron's bid was a better option because the Sandy Hook families agreed to waive some of the money owed them in order to pay off Jones's other creditors. I've always thought my goal was to maximize the recovery for unsecured creditors, Murray said, per Bloomberg, and I guess that's probably right. And under one bid, they're clearly better off than they were under the other. Jones has made it clear that he was working with a group of what he dubbed, quote, good guy bidders, they were probably not, who he hoped would buy the site and keep him on the air. The only other bid besides the Onions was a $3.5 million bid from First United American Companies, LLC, the company that operates Jones's online supplement store. The evidentiary hearing is expected to be held next week. That is now this week. I don't know what day that's coming, but there you have it. Okay, so that helps us move along in the background there. All right, that was the first story we heard of them attempting to do some kind of a do-over here and set this up for a reversal. But Law and Chaos Pod has more to say about it. Not that the site is going to load anytime soon, but maybe we can read it in pocket mode if it'll let us out of here. I can't get through to the site for some reason and then give you, therefore, the correct byline on this piece. But it looks like in the pocket version it reads, no, Elon Musk isn't riding to Alex Jones's rescue. Trump and, there's a quote is how it begins from Alex Jones. Trump and Elon are already investigating the Democrats' use of the weaponized DOJ bankruptcy system, which it isn't a DOJ system, against InfoWars. Alex Jones tweeted after the latest hearing in his bankruptcy case. Alex Jones returns to, is this more from him? Yes. Alex Jones returns to InfoWars historic studios after Judge blocks sale to The Onion, he shouted in a live exclusive, adding that The Onion's owner is facing a jail cell instead of controlling InfoWars. That doesn't seem right. The technical term for all of this is, I need to have my censoring horn for this, horseshoe. Well, you know, we're trying to get over this aversion to just doing the curses, but it's slow in coming. As we discussed on the show, Justifier Christopher Lopez had some questions about the auction where the Onion's parent company, Global Tetrahedron LLC, banded together with the Sandy Hook plaintiffs to buy Alex Jones's media company, Free Speech Systems. He's got like 10 names for these things. All right. And the show involved here, I guess, the Law and Chaos Pod, with which I was not previously familiar, but I guess I'm getting familiar now. All right. But the court did not block the sale at the emergency status conference on November 14th, where the runner-up bidder objected to the bidding process. And since the order authorizing the auction granted Chapter 7 bankruptcy trustee Charles Murray broad discretion to run the proceedings as he saw fit, it seems likely that the deal will eventually go through. As for the jail cell, or in all caps, jail cell, that Jones's claims about prosecutors in the Trump administration going after the trustee and perhaps even the Onion's owner, Ben Collins, is just argle-bargle from who? From who? From Jeff, we'll call you if there's an oil spill, Clark, the dingus who tried to take over the DOJ and install Trump in the White House after the 2020 election. Will he be making his way back to the DOJ? That's a fairy tale cooked up for the rubes, but oddly enough, Jones is almost telling the truth about Elon Musk's involvement in the case, even as his fanboys and some liberal commentators are getting it wrong. The issue is that ex-Twitter filed a notice of appearance in the bankruptcy case and requested copies of all the pleadings. Jones treated this as a sign that the cavalry was riding to his rescue, and it may be nothing more than they're monitoring their interests in the case. Jones treated this as a sign that the cavalry was riding to his rescue. I want to take a moment to thank Elon Musk for all he's done and to specifically point out that he sent his lawyers last Thursday afternoon to Houston in my corporate bankruptcy case, and they have appeared officially in the case and have requested all the data, all the files, and all the information so they can review it and find out for themselves exactly what's going on, Jones growled in one of his many live broadcasts. But in reality, there is no corporate bankruptcy. It's a personal bankruptcy, and that doesn't mean anything.
Sup, fam? It's your boy Darwin, a.k.a. Darwin_Darko, a.k.a. the most reasonable man in America, a.k.a. KITM's senior black correspondent. You might remember me from such recordings as Spacemen vs. Space Cadets and We Need to Talk About Joe Biden. Today, I want to bring you good news about that thing you've been struggling with. Do you suffer from giving too much of a damn? Do you turn on the series of tubes and find yourself outraged at the particular way some news organization strung some sentences together only to realize, nope, this is not some fictional hellscape? Well, guess what? You no longer have to accept the life of giving too much of a damn. You can do something about it, because even you, yes you, can be a show contributor. Now I know what you're thinking. Hey, Mr. Most Reasonable Man in America, I'm not some professional podcast talking guy. Don't worry about it. Do you have a smartphone or some other electronic recording device? Well, that's all you need. You too can have a segment where you can read us an important article and give us your take. Read one of your own original essays, or even just give us your commentary on something you'd like to share that's important to you. Fair warning though, side effects may include general punditry, having opinions and hot takes, getting stuff off your chest, and hearing your own voice. If your recording lasts longer than 5 to 7 minutes, please consult kagrox@gmail.com. That's KAGROX@gmail.com.
All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. Let's continue on trying to figure out exactly where we stand in the Alex Jones proceedings. As we continue reading from Law and Chaos Pod, or a post on behalf of Law and Chaos Pod. I guess they got a podcast and a blog, like so many people do, and they seem to be on top of what's going on here. In reality, they point out there is no corporate bankruptcy, and that's why the caption of this case is In Re Alex Jones. Although, certainly he was free to name his company Alex Jones, but that's not what they're talking about. The company, though, is Free Speech Systems, LLC, and they got booted out of bankruptcy after Judge Lopez determined that Jones never intended to negotiate with his creditors and come up with a plan to reorganize under Chapter 11. So now, FSS, Free Speech Systems, of which Jones owns 100%, so it's kind of a legal fiction, right? But people do it all the time. FSS is being sold to pay his debts as part of his personal bankruptcy under Chapter 7 liquidation, and Jones is taking advantage of his listeners' lack of knowledge about bankruptcy proceedings to pretend that Musk is coming to bail him out, blustering that, quote, I was told Elon is going to be very involved in this. Well, Elon is not going to be very involved in this, is the next section title, as a matter of fact. X Corporation's notice of appearance concerns one very narrow issue, and even Alex Jones knows it. In ordinary civil litigation, only the named plaintiff or defendant are parties to the case. Anyone else has to move to intervene under Rule 24 of the Federal Rules of Civil Procedure, demonstrating that they have a legal interest that is not adequately represented by the existing parties. In bankruptcy, the presumption is reversed. Lots of people are likely to be affected by the court's decisions, including third parties who are not formal creditors, and so permissive inclusion is the rule. Take, for example, a debtor in bankruptcy who wants to void a lease on an apartment. The landlord will be listed as a creditor, but the next potential tenant will not be, despite having a strong interest in the outcome. And so, Section 1109B of the Bankruptcy Code allows any, quote, party in interest, unquote, to enter an appearance and be heard, and that is what X Corp did. The liberal, the liberal news outlet Mother Jones and NBC News both trumpeted X Twitter's entrance of appearance, prompting widespread speculation that Elon Musk would do something to interfere with the sale. But Jones described the issue accurately. Well, accurately-ish. And I guess the quote here is, "Now, people have asked me, why did Elon do that? And I know the answer. It's because it's in his own self-interest in X not to allow them to do what they've been trying to do the past few months in my case. They have literally claimed in federal filings, the Democrats, using these plaintiffs as their front group. No chance that the Sandy Hook families could be angry with him individually because of his constant defamation of them and desecration of the memory of their family members who were murdered, the children, tiny first graders who were murdered in this. It's all crisis acting. No, nobody could get angry at that. It would have to be organized by the Democrats. But okay, right? So they have literally claimed in federal filings that they own the name Alex Jones, that they own the name real Alex Jones on X. They actually put in the filing that the 13th Amendment does not apply to Alex Jones. The amendment outlawing slavery and indentured servitude. If you get a case against you and you're sued and you lose $1 billion in the lawsuit and you have to work to pay that off, that's slavery. No. Because all the federal cases have said somebody can be bankrupt, somebody can be a criminal, somebody can be on death row, but you can't take their name and their likeness without their permission and paying them because that's slavery. Well, they are literally trying to overturn not just your property rights, but your right to your name. Who cares? The 14th Amendment is off the book. Why not the 13th? Anyway, none of that law-sounding stuff is real. That's just sovereign citizen garbage, basically. The motion to sell Alex Jones's X-Twitter handle was filed by the bankruptcy trustee, Christopher Murray, and not by Democrats or Sandy Hook plaintiffs or the Illuminati or anyone else. Murray's argument is that Jones's social media accounts, including the real Alex Jones X Twitter handle, are either corporate assets of FSS or personal property that can be seized and sold. In support, he cited holdings from other bankruptcy courts, including the Southern District of Texas, where they were working, treating social media accounts as property of a debtor's estate and ordering them to be sold for the benefit of creditors. Murray's motion does not mention the 13th Amendment, which, in case you need a refresher, says neither slavery nor involuntary servitude, except as punishment for crime whereof the party shall have been duly convicted, shall exist within the United States or any place subject to their jurisdiction, and neither does the objection filed by Jones himself. So he didn't even actually allege when push came to shove that there was a 13th Amendment issue here. In other words, in actual court, even Alex Jones knows better than to whine about slavery in a dispute over his ex-Twitter handle. Instead, Jones argued that he has a personal liberty interest in the accounts that bear his name, which is not an inherently preposterous argument. Ex-Twitter doesn't give a damn about the disposition of InfoWars. Well, maybe because they do live broadcasts there. They might have some interest, or Elon might, but the interest in the colloquial sense, not in the legal sense. But the company does care deeply about its own intellectual property, and that's why it's there. Of course, Alex Jones is gonna Alex Jones. And by the way, when I refer to it as X-Twitter, it's not that it is the letter X/Twitter, choose the moniker of your, that helps you better understand what's going on. It's his own clever turn of phrase here, and it is clever, that it is X-E-X. hyphen Twitter. Used to be known as Twitter. It's X Twitter, but also it's now named X. You get the idea. All right. Anyway, Alex Jones is going to Alex Jones, and he tweets, "I want to thank Elon Musk for joining my legal case defending against the Democrat-run deep state attacks on free speech and private," which he spells P-R-I-V-E-T, private property, he tweeted. They are literally claiming in court that my own identity and are trying to set a precedent to take anyone's identity they desire. They're literally not doing that, of course. But if you use the word literally, it makes it sound like you're serious. Anyway, what the bankruptcy court will decide is next. The court has not yet ruled on this issue, but ex-Twitter would very much like to avoid a high-profile ruling, even one of limited precedence, saying that social media handles can be seized and sold. Oddly enough, the company's revised terms of service do not explicitly bar the sale of handles. Instead, the terms of service distinguish between content, defined as any information, text, links, graphics, photos, audio, videos, or other materials or arrangements of materials uploaded, downloaded, or appearing on the platform, and services, which encompasses the right to use the platform itself. The TOS explicitly says that users own their content and agree to license it to the company, but the right to log in and post content is characterized as a revocable license, revocable, I guess we would say. Although maybe that's is that another legal Britishism that I learned from law school, to be calling it revocable versus revocable? It seems to me that if you, by the way, spell it with a K, it feels like revocable, but with a C, it's revocable. License to, okay, where were we here? I got lost in this stupid point here. But the right to log in and post content is characterized as a revocable license to services that, quote, cannot be assigned, gifted, sold, shared, or transferred in any other manner or to any other individual or entity without X's express written consent. In other words, users can sell their content even if they've uploaded it to the platform, say by turning it into a book, but they may not sell their license to use the services, say by conveying their handle to a banned user. And the only thing that ex-Twitter cares about here is whether the real Alex Jones account itself and or the content within it, such as direct messages, can be sold off to pay Jones's debts, which is exactly what ex-Twitter's lawyer, Jonathan Weichselbaum, 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 maybe, said at the status conference last week, stating that he was appearing to preserve the company's rights to object to the sale of the real Alex Jones account, and noting that the issue was not presently ripe. And it's why Latham and Watkins sent an associate to the hearing and not Caroline Reckler, the partner at the top of the signature block. I guess the last section here, a victory for Elon Musk will not block the sale of InfoWars to The Onion, or at least not as it's currently constituted anyway. But I guess any piece of magic, any individual piece of magic is doable in the right courtroom with the right judge, but that's not where this is. Social media accounts are routinely transferred by courts, including both in bankruptcy and in private settlements. We are aware of no other case in which X Corp has sought to intervene over the proposed transfer of a Twitter handle. That doesn't mean, though, that the company is legally prohibited from doing so here, but it will likely inform how Judge Lopez views X Corp's legal interests under the terms of service. If it hasn't tried to stop transfers in the past, even in this particular courthouse, one might infer that its current stance is more of a political stunt than a legal argument. We shall see. But even if the court rules that X can veto the transfer of a Twitter handle in bankruptcy, that won't invalidate the sale of free speech systems. It will just mean that The Onion doesn't get control of Jones's social media accounts. Musk is a vile cancer on modern society, but he's not buying InfoWars to bail out a walking crap post. Have to do that again. All right, sorry, Alex. He's just not that into you. So, okay, I think that brings us up to speed. And that's Tim, as they call him, Tim Onion's view of things, Ben Collins' view of things. He appeared to endorse that description of the state of affairs in the case, and I think that makes a great deal of sense. I think that this description makes a great deal of sense, so I can see why Ben Collins would endorse. I think that's a correct view of what's going on here. Okay, let's see. Many other things to, again, catch up on. Shall we read all the way through the rest of this other thing that I had yesterday from Futurism.com that we tried to squeeze in at the end about RFK Jr. saying he would send people to labor camps for taking Adderall? You want some clarification on this? let's read all the way through because it was kind of garbled, and it's just a 2-minute thing. This again from Neoscope, which operates under the URL of futurism.com. And Neoscope is, I don't know what, one of the verticals underneath it. RFK Jr. saying he'll send people taking Adderall to labor camps. What's going on here? We'll read you the piece. This is by Sharon Adarlo, and I've seen similar references written up in more mainstream publications. I don't know why this was the one that landed here, but it is being discussed in other publications as well. Robert F. Kennedy Jr., independent challenger for president. Remember, this is from back in July of this year when he was still running. And anti-vaccine activist, and he's still that, has a cockamamie solution, and it's still cockamamie, for drug addicts and people who use medication for depression or ADHD. Strip people of their tech gadgets, which I guess he's, of the school that, too much screen time is what's making these people depressed. Strip them of their tech gadgets, send them to government-funded wellness farms to grow organic food. Okay, sure. Doesn't that sound suspiciously like a labor camp? Kennedy extolled this unworkable idea during a videotape podcast last week, back in July, billed as a Latino town hall, first flagged by Mother Jones. There they are again. I'm going to create these wellness farms where they can go to get off of illegal drugs, off of opiates, but also illegal drugs, other psychiatric drugs, if they want to get off the SSRIs, I don't know, get off the benzos, don't know, to get off Adderall, and to spend time as much as they need. In fact, 3 or 4 years if they need it, to learn to get reparented, a word we were not familiar with, to reconnect with communities, he said during the broadcast. So it's kind of argle-bargly and lots of code and not meant for normie consumption, I guess. But there you have it. Based solely on that, I mean, I guess he could always fall back on saying, but it's an if they want it thing. But I guess the difficulty here is that I don't know whether he has reiterated this at any point since the election, but this is, a good classic example of him trying to, one, this would be an okay thing to have as a pilot program somewhere, like as a diversion from the courts if you've got a drug conviction, a diversion from jail, you go to work voluntarily on a organic farm somewhere. I don't know. It doesn't really make any difference what you do. But, you could make the case that this is a diversion program that we want to try in one place. But then Trump wins the election, says RFK is going to be running HHS, and endorses ideas like, yeah, sure, just trash entire departments and fire everybody who works there and just implement your ideas. It's the ultimate in why don't you justism. And now it's no longer clear whether RFK thinks he has carte blanche to actually implement this as a national program. Now, while he's running for president, he needs to, self-aggrandize. So it's no longer sufficient to say, well, I'd like to try this as a pilot program somewhere. And it instead turns into, there'll be rural, in rural areas all over the country we'll have these farms. And we're just going to everybody who's on drugs or convicted in a drug case will go there. / if you want to, okay. So he wants to have a foot in both worlds, both the authoritarian who knows what's best for everybody and sends them to the farms, but also there's still somewhere in him, like Darth Vader, somewhere in here has a streak of the old good that he may have learned from being part of the Kennedy clan at some point. Oh yeah, right. If you want to, we don't want to violate you and violate your freedoms. So it doesn't hang together as a coherent philosophy, but it's Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Nothing's going to hang together as coherent. Why an organic farm as a solution? Well, Kennedy claimed in the podcast that a lot of the behavioral issues are food related and a lot of the illnesses are food related. And there's a big, flourishing school of alternative medicine in which people do believe that. And I'm sure that in some cases it can even have a connection. I mean, I know that certainly in our own explorations of ADHD issues, there's suggestion, for instance, that particular food colorings are triggering of the more difficult to manage symptoms of certain kinds of ADHD. So you experiment with these things, eliminating that from the diet, eliminating, certainly High sugar foods may be something that triggers the hyperactivity part of the ADHD. You know, it's not out of the question, and it's not ludicrous. But I don't know that farming organic food has anything to do with it. But certainly, I guess his theory would be, well, if you ate organic food all the time, then there wouldn't be these artificial substances that may or may not trigger part of your difficulties. Maybe, yes, eating organic might be nice. Forcing you to farm your own organic in order to do it, that might be a little more questionable. And, of course, how would all this be paid for? Not through Elon Musk's billions of dollars, not through Kennedy family fortune. No, a tax on cannabis sales would fund these farms, he proposed. I don't know how much there is. I mean, there's certainly plenty of money to be raised on taxing cannabis, but does it pay for a network of what would have to be hundreds, if not thousands, of organic farms all over the country on land that would have to be purchased? And how long does it take to stand up an organic farm? And, you know, it's just kind of a dumb, not very well thought out idea. But I guess if you could put the power of the federal government behind it by fiat from Donald Trump, you know, it allows you to continue further in your fantasy. I guess there's that. Maybe this would be the point to double back and say, I did see something this morning, Jamel Bowie commenting on something that made me say, oh, yeah, right. That's a recurring theme for us. Jamel just kind of, what triggered it? I'm not sure. He was just basically, I guess, last night he began saying, somehow Trump is God Emperor, and if he wills it, it will occur, is a belief that is shared across the political spectrum. As comment on democratic doomerism, in which we dabble from time to time, in which we say, oh, Trump is going to be able to do whatever he wants and the courts are just going to hand it to him. And ultimately, yes, we think that might in fact be the case. But as I was explaining yesterday, that doesn't mean, even if it's 100% guaranteed that he's going to get it the way he wants it eventually, that doesn't mean you don't fight every day to delay it. As I mentioned yesterday, and I think this is maybe going to become the mantra here, although it'll probably land us in a re-education camp eventually, is every day that you fight, every day that you delay, even if you can only delay this inevitable thing for a day, every day's delay is a day that Trump could drop dead. And I know, yeah, I'm already getting the pushback from people, but Vance, he's terrible, he's even worse, as if J.D. Vance wouldn't take over and do exactly the same thing. Yeah, I know. And then you delay him for a day. And now, not that it's any chance, I don't think. I mean, maybe he's destined for an early death. I don't know. But it's not that this wins the day or the year or the fight forever. It's just, it gets you another day. Now, Donald Trump dropping dead and being succeeded in the presidency by J.D. Vance, no doubt a terrible thing. No doubt J.D. Vance is worse in some ways. But I'll tell you where he's really worse. He's worse at being Trump. Donald Trump's world is 100% top to bottom, always has been, always will be, a cult of personality. And that means his personality. I just want to remind you how many times we've seen other politicians say, oh, this would be easy. You just lie your ass off, do whatever the F you want, bluster and say you're the best, and just declare victory and do the worst things and let the cruelty be the point, as Adam Serwer puts it, and I can become Trump. I can make this magic work for me. We've seen people by the dozens try it on every level, and they all fail. They all fail. It's a cult of personality, and there's just something that Donald Trump brings to the table that not even Donald Trump Jr. has got. None of them have got it. None of them can, so far, have been able to make it. It would be very dangerous when they find the person who can. But so far, nobody's been able to make it work. It's inexplicable, and it can't be bottled. So to the extent that you delay, and then Trump drops dead and J.D. Vance steps into the picture, that does not guarantee that things move forward. A lot of the things that lead to Donald Trump's appearance of success are dependent on it being Donald Trump. And if you can't even have the appearance of success, that's when the infighting starts. That's when people are stabbing each other in the back. J.D. Vance steps in to be president. Elon Musk says, to hell with that, I should be president. Don Jr. says, to hell with that, I should be president. Mike Johnson thinks he should be president. This guy has no experience. Let's 25th Amendment him and put me in. I don't know. But, you know, the other alternative, of course, is do nothing. Just sit there and take it. But look, if it doesn't work 100%, it doesn't mean that everything is going to fail. But I think a lot more things will fail because, like I said, everybody who's tried to be Trump and assume that role has failed in actually executing. Trump has failed in actually executing, but he makes people think he's not failing. And I think that's the part that his successors will fail in. But also as a bonus, Donald Trump is dead in that scenario, and I'll take it, to be honest. All right, so as Jamel was saying, somehow Trump is God Emperor, and if he wills it, it will occur, is a belief that is shared across the political spectrum. I'm trying to break free from that by saying, no, don't accept the outcome of anything. And by the way, this also, I did say this morning, this harkens back to my old mantra of Trump and paperwork, man. Ask for proof on everything. You should be back to the default. They never went to it. But I go back to the default of, okay, fine. He nominates so-and-so. He sends the nomination to the Senate. If he doesn't bypass the Senate and he does send them the nominations, you stop and say, I don't know that that's really from Donald Trump. I need that verified. I'm going to call for a roll call vote. I say we don't just accept a written communication from the president just because the doorkeeper says it's a written communication from the president. I don't know what this thing is. They forged electoral votes, for God's sake. You know, now you actually have a reason to believe that everything he sends is a forgery. Before it was just me telling you he's probably forging stuff. But now you got a reason. All right. Well, anyway, so that's what I shared with this. Remember that Trump has a problem with paperwork. He doesn't have the juice or the knowledge or the chops to make things happen. So, yeah, you should doubt that if he wills it, it will occur. He goes on, by the way, Jamel says, to add, meanwhile, I'm watching in real time as the president-elect appears to be willing to unravel his administration from the jump with a ruinous fight to install a pedo-con as attorney general. Trump is going to fire everyone in the bureaucracy, and that's how he'll get what he wants. True, but once again, Trump saying he wants to implement Schedule F and actually implementing a complex bureaucratic maneuver open to court challenge, two different things. Politics hasn't ended, and things are hard. I am not saying that there are guardrails or that Trump will be stopped by some other force. I'm saying that everything can be a battle if his opponents choose to make it one. And that is about fighting everything for every moment that you can, secure in the knowledge that one day Trump does, in fact, drop dead. You know, it is going to happen. So, anyway, I just wanted to bring that up, even though I was meaning to get through this Robert F. Kennedy article instead about the Adderall, right? Back to that. I need Adderall, I guess. Goodness, I can't stay focused. So, what was he going to do? Right. He's going to pay for it all with cannabis sale taxes. I'm going to dedicate that revenue to creating wellness farms, drug rehabilitation farms in rural areas all over the country. And I'm sure in Idaho, they can't wait to have government-owned and operated organic wellness farms, right? Well, this he said, of course, during the podcast, with no indication anywhere that he has any reason to believe that getting a hold of the land will actually be something he can manage. But anyway, I'm going to make it just why don't you justism? Ultimate again. I'm going to make it so people can go if you're convicted of a drug offense or if you have a drug problem. You can go to one of these places for free. Again, we have a definitional issue. Like in RFK Jr.'s mind, being a child in school with ADHD and getting prescribed Adderall and using it and finding academic success, well, that's a drug problem in this country, in his view. You thought he meant people convicted of possession of illegal narcotics. No, he means anybody who uses pharmaceuticals that he disagrees with the use of has a drug problem, right? Just as we now have people running around saying, oh, I'm an undocumented immigrant. But I believe in Donald Trump and I support him because he's just going to deport the criminals. And remember, he calls you what? I say undocumented immigrant. He says illegal alien. What do you think illegal means? Anyway, subject for another day. Back to this. Something tells us this plan won't work or help people with addiction and mental health issues, but it's par for the course for Kennedy, a longtime peddler of disproven health beliefs, vaccines being dangerous, and containing microchip trackers. They're not dangerous. They don't have those. And that people on antidepressants are at risk of engaging in mass shootings. That, too, completely false. The notion about sending troubled people to an organic farm harkens back to his past as an environmental lawyer, while the idea of taking away screens seems to align with the view that he had expressed in 2020 that 5G smartphones can cause health issues, which is, again, connected to a raft of debunked conspiracy theories. Ooh, we love rafts, though. Setting aside his bat crap views, antidepressants, along with therapy, are clinically proven to help some depressed folks, while there's ample research that medication like Adderall can alleviate ADHD symptoms. Kennedy, like many crunchy granola tinfoil hat wearers, is concerned about purity and contamination, hence his wacky ideas on medicine and behavioral issues. Sure, there's no denying that there are environmental triggers that can cause health problems. Oh, I'm very late. I apologize to Justice on this one. I'm more than a minute behind, as a matter of fact. But sure, there's no denying that there are environmental triggers that can cause health problems. But let's not listen to a guy with a track record for outlandish claims that's led to actual people getting hurt or dying, as they did of, measles in Samoa, as I recall. Okay. Well, now we've gotten that one out of the way and we can eliminate it from pocket, which was my aim in going a little bit long. Sorry. Didn't mean to take that much longer doing it. But now, now would be an excellent time for me to give you the roundup on what Justice Putnam has planned for the West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. And it's probably ready, but he hasn't pressed the send button, and he's going to hear it in 15 seconds, and then I'm not going to have enough time. Suffice to say, as I usually say when I have run long and run out of time to tell you what he's got on tap for you, that he has an excellent collection of stories from around the country and around the world, some of which we desperately wanted to include in today's show and just couldn't find the time for, and he will make up for that deficit, as he always does. Well, we'll be back tomorrow. Greg will be with us. We have the rest of the week to try to run through some more of these stories. I don't know. Keep it in mind, though. It's certainly something to think about. Trump and paperwork, man. Now you know he forges things. You should be on the lookout for it at every turn.
From networksradio.com, you have been listening to Kagro in the Morning with David Waldman.
All right. Well, like I said, we'll be back tomorrow. Justice is now admitting to his error, and I don't know, hopefully making just a joke, because if he tries to set this thing through all the way and I try to read it to you, well, I'll be on for another 15 minutes. So we're not going to do that. We'll hand things over. Just stay tuned and listen, for God's sake. We'll see you tomorrow.